march, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along.
Today is August the 29th, 2012. I'm Larry Gockel at the Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa, Idaho. I will be interviewing Jesse Berain for our Veterans History Project in partnership with the Library of Congress. The camera operator is Al Pilch. Welcome, Jesse.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I wonder if, can you give us some, your information, your full name, address, birth date, and your branch service?
My name is, my real name is Jesus, but in the 4th grade the kids used to make fun of me when they call me Jesus. And then the teacher, I punch him, and then the teacher took me in and says, "Why are you always hitting these kids?" He says, "Well, they call me Jesus, and they make fun of me." He says, "Well, you certainly don't behave like a Jesus." So in the 4th grade, they changed my name to Jesse. That's how I got my name, Jesse. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, 1928, and both of my parents came from Mexico, and but all our family was born there in San Antonio. And I joined the Air Force in 1946 when I graduated from high school, and the Air Force separated from the Army. And I went to Lackland, and since I had high school ROTC, they made a drill instructor out of me. And then I found out that being a lifeguard or physical training, you'd get what they call 2 for 1, which means you work 4 hours and they give you credit for 8. So I changed from being a drill instructor to a physical training instructor, and so I was discharged, and then in 1950 the Korean War came on, and I went and joined up again, and I went to California to take my basic with the 40th Infantry Division.
So you went into the Air Force, right?
Originally, I was in the Air Force.
Okay, well that's good. Well, thank you so much. So Jesse, you said that you were born in San Antonio, Texas.
Correct.
Did you go to school there?
I finished high school there, and I was in high school ROTC, and then I graduated in 1946 and joined the Air Force.
I see. Did you have any brothers or sisters, siblings?
There were 7 of us altogether. Yeah, 3 girls, 4 boys.
Were you the oldest, youngest?
No, I was next to the youngest.
Did any of the other siblings go into the services?
All of us.
All of you. Wow, that's great.
All 4 of us.
So you graduated from high school then, and then you went into the Air Force.
Correct. The Air Force had just separated from the Army, and I had high school ROTC. I was a lieutenant in ROTC, and the only reason I'm making that statement because instead of going to take basic in Lackland, what we now call Lackland Air Force Base, they put me as a drill instructor because all of the old soldiers was getting out of the service in 46. So I think what I'm trying to say, I never took basic. I became a drill and physical training instructor.
Because of your experience with the ROTC?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's good. So then you graduated from a boot camp there in Lackland.
Yes.
And then where were you assigned? Where were your orders?
I stayed there. They kept me as a drill instructor and a physical training instructor. And the reason I like physical training because they would give you 2 for 1, meaning you work 4 hours and they give you credit for 8. Yes.
How long were you there instructing them there?
About 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, three plus. Yeah.
And after that, what did you do?
I got out, and then in 1950, I went into the Army.
Oh, I see.
And then I went to Korea as a private, and I made Master Sergeant in combat. They put me as a platoon leader, and they would give me a stripe every month while I was
Yeah,
in combat.
because
in Korea.
you served a little over 2 years there in Korea, and so your advancement was, you said they give you a stripe every once a month?
Yeah, every time I get, and they gave me the next one, because
Wow.
I was a rifle platoon leader.
Mm-hmm.
And at times I was a company commander, because I had previous military experience.
Sure, yeah. Sure,
And,
from the Air Force, right.
And so they gave it to me. They offered me a battlefield commission,
Mm.
but I didn't like what went with it. I had to re-enlist and then expand my time there
Yeah,
for at least 1 year after I got my
yeah, extend your
promotion.
tour. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you turned that down then?
Yes, I turned my battlefield commission down.
Uh-huh. So did you see much action in Korea then?
Yes,
Can you
I
tell
did.
us- Can you tell
We-
us some of the places you were?
We went almost up, all the way up north, and we were in what we now call North Korea. And then the Chinese came in, and they started shoving us back, and then they made arrangements, so they divided Korea into two parts.
Mm-hmm.
One part went to China, and the other part to the U.S. And of course, Japan was quite involved in all of the process.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to show us on the map there where you were?
Let me see. This is the boundary, is this
Mhm.
correct? Well, at time we were all the way up here, and that's when I remember this one here. That's when the Chinese came in, and they pushed us back,
Mhm.
and then to some kind of agreement, they divided Korea into two parts, with the northern part going to China, the southern part
Mhm.
staying in the hands of what we used to call free Korea.
Mhm. Well, it says armistice line there. That must be what you're referring to, where they had this agreement then.
Yes,
Uh-huh, where they
and I was
separated.
south of Seoul. I remember Seoul. I was somewhere in here
Mhm.
when all of these happened, and so we had. I remember being up on a hill, and I remember we had foxholes. We were closer to this line, and we were there in case they attacked us.
Mhm.
And I can recall that we were on the side of the hill, and we took down trees, and we put them like that, and we formed what we used to call bunkers, and we throw dirt on top,
Mhm.
and you could shoot out of them.
Yeah. So Jesse, how old were you then?
I was born in 28, so in 50 I would have been 22, and so I was 23, 24
Wow.
in that area, early 20s. Yeah.
Wow. Mm. Well, that's really interesting. So how long were you actually in? Well, it would have been South Korea then.
Yeah. All told, I spent 18 months out in that area.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, part of it was in Japan, and part of it was in Korea.
Mhm. What part of Japan were you in?
And I'm trying to remember the name of the camp, and I can't at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I was north of Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had different bases in Japan, and the Navy kind of had them on the coast, and the Army, they set them in inside Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you had, I see by your hat there, you have a lot of different pins, and the kind of action you saw, you must have got some battle ribbons and different things. Do you want to share that with us? Some of that action?
Well, yes. We got a star I had 3 stars every time we run into combat, and we were pushing one way or another. They'd give us a star, and I have 3 stars.
Mm-hmm.
Stars where, our objective was to hold on to South Korea.
Mhm.
But we went all the way up to the north part, and then we were shoved back when the Chinese came back. And so, and then, you know, they came some sort of agreement where they divided Korea into two parts.
So you were up in the north then, before they had this agreement?
Yeah,
Yeah,
at one point.
yeah,
Yes.
and then the Chinese pushed you back down?
Yes,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yes.
Well, that's really something. And you said you had 3 stars, so, and that's action. That's for
Combat.
Combat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were
And,
you, did you have any kind of close encounters, or were you wounded, Jesse? Or
no, a lot of my men got killed.
wow.
I think right now what I'm saying, I was a rifle platoon leader,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, we would send 2 people up front on each side of the mountain this way, and those guys were more apt to get killed than anybody else.
Because they were like on point or something.
Point
Yeah.
men, they call them point men.
Yeah, that's a dangerous job.
And the whole idea was, you know, that you don't want the whole platoon or the unit that you have in charge of be caught in the middle, so you'd send point people up on each side of the hill. And in Korea, there's a lot of hills, and so that was the whole idea.
Did guys volunteer for point mostly, or
You rotated it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You would rotate it. So, you know, the whole idea is, you know, that you wouldn't give it to 2 persons at the same
Yeah.
time all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, in my own thought process, you know, you let the Lord handle whatever happens
Yeah.
out front, and the other thought process that I had is that way you don't get a guilty conscience
Mhm.
if something happens to a person, so everybody gets a chance of doing that.
Yeah, rotating it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can understand that. A lot of responsibility for a platoon leader and a commander then. With
Yes.
all that. How many men did you have under your? command?
There's 4 squads, and each squad had 9 people, so it was around 35 to 40
Mhm.
people in a platoon.
Mhm.
Yeah, and sometimes you had other units that assisted you, because you had a heavy weapons squad within a platoon, and the heavy weapons were the machine guns and bazookas and stuff like that. And so a lot of times you had, in a squad, you had around 12 people.
Was most of your weapons just like M1s then for your group?
Yes, M1s and bazookas were
Yeah,
our primary,
and,
and of course
handgun.
you had mortars also.
Yeah.
When you know, you settle down in a spot, you set
Sure.
up your mortars.
Call in the strikes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, you had mortars with the
With-
troops, and then you have the artillery.
Right, you called in.
Yeah, you called them in, and then we also could call in airplanes for airstrikes, either with machine gun or bombs.
Mhm.
So essentially, the whole idea was see how many of the troops you could, as far as I was concerned, how many will survive. And,
Right, sure.
And
that
so
was-
you don't get caught in between 2 hills, and that's a whole. So in our thought processes, you'd put one, and I'd call him scout for the lack of a better word, put him on the right side of the hill, and then you put another scout out here out front, so you wouldn't get caught in between.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then it was their job then to relay back information
precisely,
to.
precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call them scouts.
Mhm.
We call them scouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in that sense, the thought process is that you wouldn't send the same people all the time. You rotate it, and you know, and my thought process, it becomes an act of God rather than somebody that you dislike or didn't like or whatever
Yeah.
you put out front or
Yeah, you
or
couldn't
whatever.
do that. Yeah.
You rotated it.
And you said you lost several men then, so you were probably constantly getting new replacements in.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Precisely.
New fresh recruits.
Yeah.
Were they usually just new recruits, or were you bringing in any veterans to your group? Or
Mostly recruits.
just young,
Yeah.
right out of boot camp, pretty much.
Precisely, yes.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah, because, most of the veterans of World War II, because this is the Korean War, were primarily stationed somewhere, and they were the trainers and the leaders in a place in a station, either in Japan or here in this country. They were training others, and it was mostly new recruits.
Yeah. That must have been hard when you'd lose one of those, because you said you felt a sense of responsibility towards those younger ones, and it must have been really tough to continue
Yes.
doing your job and your responsibilities.
The only thought process that you had in terms of balancing that out, is that you'd rather lose one or two people
Yeah.
than be caught in between and have a whole bunch of
Sure.
rifle platoons. So the whole idea was to put two folks out there as points. We call them points, and our scouts, and you'd have two people out front, so you could save the major part of the group.
Well, sure.
That was the whole thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and generally you would keep your mortars and your machine guns in the back, and the ones the point people, you'd have the M1s or the rifles. Yeah.
So you've got some pictures here of yourself when you were in, and is this a medal here?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Can you tell us, it says American Institute? Oh, it's a service medal. And this one here is the United Gem Society. Is this something that was just given to you in participation?
Yes.
Different things. Uh-huh. Here's some pictures of you as a youngster. There's one more. Pretty handsome uniform they had there, huh?
And, we considered it a great honor to serve. We considered a great honor to serve.
Uh-huh.
We didn't think in two ways about it. All my family, all my brothers served in World War II or Korea, and so we considered it an honor to serve.
Yeah, that's quite a tribute that many everybody in your family served their country. That's amazing. It didn't always happen. What other branches? They were in the Army and Air Force. Were any of them in the Navy, or?
One was in the Navy.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Yeah, one was in the Navy. The other ones were all Army. I joined the Air Force to start out with, and then I went to the Army.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Well, it was Army Air Force to start out
right,
with.
Right.
And when I first went in, and then I chose the infantry rather than the Air Force. Yeah.
That's what a lot of the action was, is infantry, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I, when the Korean War, I wanted action
Sure.
for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
And I think you thought about it as serving your country. I didn't think about myself, my family, or whatever. You thought about it as serving your country.
Sure. Yeah.
And my mother was a full-blooded Navajo Indian.
Wow.
And so, and my dad was French Basque, and they met in New Mexico. And so we had a tremendous love for our country.
Yeah.
They called me a Mexican, but I had nothing Mexican about me.
Wow.
I was
yeah.
born in Texas, and like I said, with my mother being a full-blooded Indian and my dad being French Basque, I didn't think myself as a Mexican, but in Texas, that's what they call you. So it was okay.
Yeah.
It was
right.
okay. Yeah.
So you got out in, looks like you got out in September of 1952. Was that your discharge date?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where did you muster out? when you got discharged, where did you get out? Where were you?
Oh, in Fort Sam Houston, Texas.
In Texas.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. They'd always send you close to home and when you got your discharge. And as a matter of fact, I had to think greatly about re-enlisting. You know, because my advice from a lot of people were, you're a master sergeant, you're
Mhm.
young, and why don't you stay in the service? But then, you know, I married my wife, and I had to make a decision in terms of
Mhm.
raising a family and being with my family,
Mhm.
and or being in the service.
Mhm.
There was not a lot of thought process as you have today, where you're in the military and then you have your family.
Mhm.
At that point, the thought process was, if you're in the military, they're liable to send you any place in the world,
Yeah, right.
and with no thought at all about your wife and your family. It was a different thought process at that time.
So you're the years you spent there in Korea, and when you get discharged, did you get extended? Did your time get extended any during the war, or did you just serve your regular time and then got out?
Yes, I just served my regular time.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted me to stay, but you know, I decided I decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they wanted. As a matter of fact, they offered me a battlefield commission
Wow.
to stay.
That must have taken some thought then to turn that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I had to balance that with, I got a wife and I got a child
Mm-hmm.
with family. And I think if I'd have been by myself, I'd have stayed and made a career out of the service.
Mm-hmm. So you got out at Sam Houston, and then did you go back to San Antonio with your family?
Yes, well, in combat in Korea, I promised the Lord to dedicate my life to the service of migrant workers, because I started to pick cotton during the Depression. We used to go and pick cotton in 1936. I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
and we, you know, we had to help the family. So during cotton picking season, we'd go out and pick cotton. And I can recall one year, my 2 brothers and I brought my mama $44.20. I still remember the amount.
Hmm.
And she was just cried and says, "Kids, you don't know
Mm.
how much this means to me. You need to understand this was during the Depression." And
Yeah, $40 went a long ways.
well, my dad was making $10 a week.
Wow.
He was working at a hamburger shop 7 days a week and making $10 a week. So
And you and your brother picked cotton to help supplement the
yeah,
income. then.
we brought my mom $40. There was no such thing as I made this money. We stack it as much as we could
Mhm.
after buying groceries and stuff.
Everything just went to the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was, that was a thought process then. It was not,
Mhm.
I made this much money, I can do anything I
Yeah.
want with it.
I'm going to keep so much
So,
and give the family
yeah, the
so
whole
much.
process was,
Everything went to the family.
well, and the other thought that I'm thinking right now is the mother was the head of the
Yeah.
family rather than
Uh-huh.
the dad. The dad would be out there working,
Mm-hmm.
bring the money to mama, and mama would you know, would spend it.
Yeah. Well, they were the homemaker, and
Yeah.
they set
Yeah.
most of the rules, didn't they?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. Papa would just bring, he earned $10 a week.
Mhm.
He's making hamburgers at a hamburger place, and
Mhm.
I can still recall he'd come and bring the $10 to mama, and then mama would give him $1 or $2 for the bus service, because
Mhm.
bus was a nickel at that time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So after you, what kind of a profession then did you end up working at?
In high school, I took body and fender work,
Mm-hmm.
and I graduated in '46 out of high school, and I worked body and fender.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing body and fender work, and it was quite extensive at that time because most people didn't go buy a new car. They'd
Yeah.
fix the old ones.
Just repaired up the old ones.
Yeah. There was a lot of work in doing body
Mhm.
and fender, and paint jobs and stuff like that. And so that was my first profession
Mhm.
out of high school.
Mhm.
And I took high school, I went to a high school that had all of these professional type things, mechanics, painting.
Trades, yeah.
Yeah, and it was in the poor part of town, you know, where most of the kids would just go through high school. So the school district put a lot of they call it vocational
Mhm.
training
Sure.
in that part of town.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the other high schools where the Anglos live at, they prepared them for college. But
Yeah.
they never thought about us
Hmm.
going to college.
Mhm.
That was the thought process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then, when you got out, did you go back to that trade then, when you got out of the military?
Yes,
You
well, I promised the Lord to dedicate to the service of migrant work,
Mhm.
because I started to pick cotton, and in 1954, people were coming to Idaho. And so I didn't know about Idaho, but I knew the folks. And they used to have a contract there in San Antonio, Texas. And this contractor would go and recruit people all over, mostly close to the border, and over in the Corpus Christi area or the coast, the Gulf Coast. And he would recruit people. At that time, there were 22 labor camps in the state of Idaho,
Wow.
because farm work was very labor intensive.
Mhm.
And there was a labor camp in Salmon. A lot of people don't know that.
Hmm.
There were a whole bunch around the Burley area, and a whole bunch around the Twin Falls area, and a whole bunch of them over here in Marcin, and there were 2 across the border in Oregon, and there was one in Payette, and there was even one up in northern Idaho. And they would bring all of these people to do the farm work. And I can still recall you had to thin the beets by hand, and what thinning means is that they just would put the plants like this, and thinning meant that you go with a hoe and you try to leave the beets about that far apart.
Mhm.
And also you had what they call doubles, because a lot of times they would be doubles like that. So you had to take
Hmm.
one of them out so you leave a plant like that.
Mhm.
But you had a little short handle how that you go with this, and this one, you take out what they call the doubles. You take one out in case they had a plant like that.
And boy, that was hard work, wasn't it?
It was hard work. You had to thin the beets, and there were 22 labor camps in Idaho. And they had a recruiter out of San Antonio, Texas, and that guy went all the way down close to the border and all the way up in New Mexico. And they recruit people to come to Idaho to do the work, Mexican people, to do the work here in Idaho. And I came to Twin Falls in '54.
Mhm.
And then I saw other opportunities, and I went to work in a bar, and then I bought a bar.
Hmm.
And because I saw these Mexicans, because there were, like I said, there were 22 labor camps, and a lot of these folks working and then going into the bars on weekends.
Mhm.
So I saw an opportunity, and I bought a bar.
Hmm.
And then I saw another opportunity, and so I started to buy cars in the winter where people were going broke or when they were cheaper.
Mhm.
And then I'd stash 7, 8, 10 cars in the winter, and then I'd sell them in the summer.
Hmm.
The interesting part about that is that I was not a big spender, so I can recall I went and bought my first house and gave $8,000. The guy wanted $10,000. I bought it for $8,500, and I paid him cash for it.
Wow. Mhm.
And what he really told me, he says, "What do? You sell drugs?" I says, "No, I work for a living."
Uh-huh.
And he says, "Nobody has $8,500 cash." I says, "Well, I do."
Mhm.
He says, you do something other than working. And I had a job with the railroad because I went to work as a brakeman,
Mhm.
but the railroad was mostly a winter job,
Mhm.
because in the winter you'd go and pick up the sugar beets and stack them and pile them and stuff like that, and potatoes and stuff like that. And, I worked as a brakeman in the winter, and then I saw opportunities, so I bought a bar,
Mm-hmm.
and then I bought a grocery store.
Wow.
And then in the winter, I buy cars. And then in the summer, I'd sell cars. I'd have 7, 8, or 10 cars.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting part about that is when I went to buy my first house, the guy wanted 10,000, and I think we settled for 8,500 or 9,000.
Mm-hmm.
I says, I'll be right back. So I went and got him a check
Mm.
and paid him cash. He says, you got that much money? I says, yeah. He says, what do? You sell drugs? I says, no, I don't even use it, man. I don't even drink. He says, nobody has that much money. I says, well, I got it.
How many children did you have then? Or?
All told, we had 7.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There were 3 that were born here, and then the first one, 4 that were born in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did they go to school? A lot of them go to school here in Idaho.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 And a lot of them stayed down in Texas with the other part of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came over, but they didn't like that farm work.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine. That's some.
They didn't like the farm work, so they went back to Texas and stayed with the family.
Mm-hmm. Chose other kind of professions to
Yeah, yeah,
make their living.
yeah. And I stayed here, and like I said, I got in business because I saw opportunities
Mm-hmm.
in business, and
Was this in Twin Falls or?
in Twin Falls.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And there were a lot of labor camps at that time. There was one in Buell, one in Jerome. There was one between Twin Falls and Burley, and there were 4 around Burley.
Mm-hmm.
There were 22 labor camps
Mm-hmm.
where they brought in people, and then they started to stay here when they started to opening up the.
And then they would just pick whatever crop was in season.
Yes.
And what would they do in the wintertime? The worker.
A lot of us went down to Arizona
Mm-hmm.
to pick cotton.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
We'd go down and pick.
Warmer weather, yeah.
Yeah, pick cotton, and then in February and March, we'd come up north of Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Mhm.
North of there were a lot of the early those little onions and radishes. We'd work there in like February and excuse me, around February, March, and April.
So
And then
you just-
in April we'd come back to Idaho.
You just follow the crops.
Yeah, for sugar beets.
Yeah.
And then from Twin Falls, we'd also move into Oregon because Oregon had a different season kind of.
Mhm.
And so I think right now what I'm saying, farm work was year-round
Mhm.
work. We'd move south during the winter and come up here north. And then, like I said, I saw opportunities other
Mhm.
than, and I set up a bar. I saw all these Mexicans going to the bar, and
Mhm.
and I says, I'm gonna set up a bar. And then, like I said, I started to buy cars and sell
Mhm.
cars, and I bought my first house cash.
Mhm. You said you dedicated a lot of your efforts to the farm workers movement. Did you get involved in any kind of politics with that, or unions, or you just helped them out?
I
the
got
leadership
involved. I got involved. As a matter of fact, I had Cesar Chavez come over
Mm,
to organize us,
wow.
and he stayed at my house.
Wow.
And so the whole idea that I had was to try to get a leader
Mhm.
in each geographical area,
Right.
and then coordinate it from Boise, and then work with the legislature and other folks that could
Mhm.
help us,
Mhm.
Department of Employment.
Yeah.
And I worked a lot with the Department of Employment so they could start hiring these folks.
Mhm.
They started out by working in these potato plants because they started to go. Simplot started to do
Mhm.
mashed potatoes and
Yeah.
you know
right.
and frozen potatoes and all that kind of stuff. So I got them into these plants to work, and then some of the people got into business. They saw what I did. I set up a bar and a used car lot and stuff like that. They saw what I was doing, and then I would help others do that. But in Boise, I didn't get into no kind of business. I just would go out and have group like this in Marsing and here, and then up in Weiser and stuff like that. And down in Twin, I would form a group so they could kind of stick together.
From your time in the military, is there anything that you brought out of the military that you used in your civilian life? It sounds like you already had military, or you had leadership from the time you left high school and then went into the services. But is there something you might have, any kind of disciplines or things that you used in your raising your family or in your work? You're working with the worker, the pickers and stuff.
Well, let me start out with a personal thing. I saw a lot of the folks in the military, they like to party a lot. You know, they come their time off, let's go to the bars and let's go look for women and all of those kind of things. And I saw that as wrong in my own thought process. So I learned that you had to have a self-imposed discipline in terms of how you lead your life, because you know the thought process when you're young is let's go have fun and do things. So I was taught a lot of discipline because it was a personal thing with me. Like I said, I made master sergeant in less than 2 years, and they offered me a battlefield commission. So I had that kind of mentality that I saw these guys that, you know, they were having fun, so-called fun, and stuff like that, and I said, that's kind of a dumb thing to do. So in terms of that, I learned, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this. And when I came over, like I said, I was interested in staying in Idaho, and I had a good job in San Antonio. I sold insurance, so I didn't have a bad job. But then again, I was looking for something that new or something that I could put more effort in helping other people.
Right.
And so I stayed in Twin, and so I saw opportunities there, and so I did things differently. I saw all the Mexicans going to bars, so I says, I'm gonna buy a bar. I saw them buy cars, so I says, I'm gonna put a used car lot. You know, and then I went to the grocery store, and they didn't have the stuff that I thought Mexicans ought to buy or have, you know. So I put up a grocery store, and then my sister used to send me boxes of chorizo mixed powder, and I would make sausage or Mexican sausage. I went down to the meat plant and I ordered 100 pounds of ground pork meat to make sausage, and he says, you want 100 pounds of ground pork? I says, yeah. So I put the ingredients in there, and it goes with vinegar and spices, etc. And then I put it on the radio, and my God, I had people coming from all over, and I was getting my tortillas out of Oregon. And the border, they had a tortilla factory over in Oregon, and hell, they'd bring me a truckload of that stuff, and I'd be selling tortillas all over the place. None of these grocery stores knew about tortillas, man. And so I was selling tortillas up to Boondang, and like I said, I just saw opportunities, and I took I don't say advantage, but I took these opportunities in order to provide the service and make money at it. I would also, I started a class on how to pass a driver's license test and stuff like that. I think right now what I'm saying, it was involved with business in terms of making money. It was involved in a social mentality where to help people. For example, I help people get driver's license because I go interpret the driver's license, but I had to establish something with the folks that ran those places in terms of, you know, they had to rely on me in terms of I was an honest person, and I would just interpret the questions in terms of passing the test for a driver's license. And
Well, it sounds like you had your military career was interesting enough, but what you've done for yourself and your family and for the workers, it sounds like you're really a man of integrity. And well, on behalf of the Library of Congress, the Warhawk, myself, I want to thank you for your service and what you've done for your country before, during the war, and now. So,
and it also involved religion.
Yes.
My wife had started the Catholic masses here at St. Mary's and at the cathedral. And I think you can closely associate it with the spiritual thing, mentality and efforts. So it was physical, spiritual, and mental. You know, with no interest in terms of what am I getting out of this. You know, it was a careful balance, and I've served 4 or 5 governors in different capacities. They, you know, everybody wanted me in a commission. I was in the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, American Cancer Society, and I was glad to do it. I was glad to do it, you know, because I was always doing something and learning from what I was doing, and so I was, you know, and I think, like I said, the most important thing that I think happened was serving the governor as an interpreter and getting the money for the Culture Center.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the important points.
Well, again, I want to thank you so much for all that you've done for your country and your community. Thank you again.
Yes, and it's been not for self-enhancement, but I did it in the name of the Lord.
Well, thank you so much.
And you know, what else can I do except thank my wife for putting up with me. Whenever I mention something, she says, "Yeah, and I was here taking care of the kids and doing all the work."